All right, I'd like to open the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. So our first order of business for 7 p.m. is the Tewksbury Country Club alteration of premises liquor license application. This is an open meeting, so do I have a motion to waive the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Since this is virtual, we'll have to do a roll call. So for tonight, why don't we start with Mr. Mark Kratman?
Aye.
How about Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Miss Anne Marie Stronach?
Aye.
And Miss Jane Wellman?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Okay, and I'm looking at the audience, and I do believe we have Mr. Mark Ginsburg. So Mr. Mark Ginsburg, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So Mark Ginsburg, Tewksbury Country Club, managing of the club here. I'm with Steve Singer. He'll give a presentation for our liquor license alteration. And I have Dick Cuco also could talk about the plans if you have any questions on that. So with that, I'll give it to Steve Singer.
Good evening, folks. My name's Steve Singer. I'm an attorney from Wakefield. I've been involved with Mark here for 20-something years, and he asked me to join in this presentation to alter the premises here at the Tewksbury Country Club. Tewksbury Country Club Events is the current holder of a liquor license for the premises that are currently here, known as the Tewksbury Country Club. And that license covers the existing building and the exterior patio areas. The country club, or Tewksbury Country Club Events, is expanding the premises by adding additional patio areas outside the existing facility, as well as construction of an addition to the existing pro shop with an additional patio area there also. What was formerly the tavern restaurant in the existing building has now been closed to make room for additional event space. I guess what you're seeing on the screen right now is the architectural plans showing the proposed addition to the pro shop. The new addition to the pro shop, which is going to be about 2,000 square feet, will be a single story consisting of a new restaurant and bar. It'll seat approximately 50 to 60 people indoors, with another 50 to 60 persons outdoors, with a full kitchen and restrooms. The existing pro shop is being relocated within the structure shown on the plans that you just had up on the screen previously. The proposed patio area expansions are also shown on the plans, and that can be seen on the plan that's actually on the screen right now, prepared by civil design consultants. That shows added patio area proposed for the existing building, which will add another 1,500 square feet to the already existing 1,500 square feet approximately. And the new patio area that is going to surround the new restaurant and pro shop, that area is approximately 4,000 square feet. All of those outdoor areas are going to be used in connection with weddings, receptions, fundraisers, golf outings, as well as use by the golfers and diners with the new restaurant. The area that you see on that plan, the kind of little circles that we'll call it the cloud, that's the area in which they would like to have as the limits of the liquor license. The application shows that there's a significant investment in this set of improvements. This expansion will continue the country club's 17 years as being the premier function and golf facility in this area. With this expansion, the facility will continue to observe all laws, rules, regulations, safety requirements regarding the sale of alcoholic beverages and food, and with the degree of professionalism that the country club has been doing for the last 17 years.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So at this point, what I'd like to do is I'll open it up to the board. And when the board is through with questions, and I'll open it up to any abutters, and then we'll close the bubble here. So why don't we start with the board? And how about Mr. Mark Kratman? Any questions?
I just have a couple of the questions on the thing. So the existing obviously is going to be turned into more function facility. And so this will accommodate the size of this. Is it comparable to what was there before, or is it smaller? What's the size with this?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's about half the size of the prior tavern.
Okay.
It-
Yeah,
We have 100 seats inside and about 100 seats outside. So we're cutting that pretty much in half.
Well, we've got when you made your announcement that you were closing the other part, we got a large outcry from the community wanting you to retain it. So that's why I'm looking at the size, because I have a feeling if this is approved, that you're going to have a large crowd showing up on day one. I actually have no other questions. I think it's a great idea. I look forward to it, and I think the community's looking forward to it as well. So I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. How about Mr. Brian Dick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, real short and sweet. It's an exciting time for Tewksbury Country Club. And, the Ginsburg family has been a great partner, not only in the business community, but in the community itself. I think as a businessman in town, I'm all in favor of, expansion and allowing businesses to become successful and thrive in Tewksbury. So, I have no doubt that Mark and his family are going to do all the right things on expansion, adhering to our guidelines and continue to make the Tewksbury Country Club a shining star in Tewksbury. So I have no questions. I am 100% behind the expansion, and I wish you the best, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. How about Ms. Stronach?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I too believe that this is a great addition to the property, and I am really thrilled that the restaurant part of it is staying as well. I do have a question regarding the liquor license. When you're telling me the cloud area, does that mean that the liquor license is, you'll be able to, looks like it's part of the parking lot area?
Yeah, we like to use that whole envelope there just in case there's ever a tented type event that may go in the parking area. So rather than going back and forth for a one-day license, I mean, it's probably never going to happen, but just in case it did, I want to have the ability to put a tent in that parking spot between the to the right of the building that you're looking at on the plan right now.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
And have that ability to do that down the road if it ever came to fruition. But I don't think it's going to happen. But I want the ability to do it without going back and forth with you guys for those one-day licenses.
No, I appreciate that. And I am assuming that if you were going to, I was wondering how you were envisioning using that area. And if you were to use that area, you would obviously very easily block off that from the rest of the incoming traffic. Is that why you selected that?
We have Jersey barriers on site here that would block it off if it came down to that. And like I say, that's probably a little more, than we need that clouded line there. It probably should be more tighter to the landscape areas there, but we just threw a rough hatch around it there. But, and like I said, the odds are pretty slim to nil, but I just figure while I'm in front of you, I'll just ask for that now, then, try and two-step it later on.
Nope, I totally appreciate that foresight, and I also appreciate the fact that if you were to do that in an area, that you would be able to block off the rest of the parking area. So thank you very much for that explanation, and I do not have any questions other than that, and I am very supportive. Obviously, as typical of your workmanship, the application is very thorough and easily read. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. How about Miss Wellman?
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Ginsburg. I'm very excited about this as a nearby neighbor of the country club. It's an impressive jewel in the town and a wonderful part of the particular Tewksbury in general. I just had a couple of really quick questions, and Ms. Stronach referenced my question regarding where you want to have that tent. I think that makes good sense to do that now and include that in your liquor license now. I think that shows foresight. So I think it's a great idea. I wondered how many jobs you have and will this increase jobs on your facility?
Well, we generally keep about 125 people full and part-time, year-round, full and part-time seasonal, being year-round. So right now we have about 15. We want to get back to 125 sooner than later. So yeah, generally about 125 part full-time seasonal, year
Right.
round, little mismatch of everything.
No, it's a really important part of the community, the country club. Do you think this expansion will change your staffing? This kind of mix of where you allocate staff?
Well, because of the a la carte will come back into play again. I think it'll probably be the same amount of people there when it's all said and done. The functions are just that. We've been generally averaging about 650 events a year for the last probably 7 or 8 years. So if that trend gets built back up again, I think that we may do a little more in events with that extra room there being available. So I think the staffing levels will stay about the same, maybe a little more, depending how aggressive we get with the new restaurant. I'm not sure. I may do breakfast. We're kind of banging that around a little bit there, so that may bring a whole different line of different cooks and different type of staff for that. And so we're still weighing a few things out as far as that goes. But overall, I think the 125 number is going to be probably the number we're going to be around going forward.
Well, I'm glad. I like getting that on the record because you continue to invest in the community and in your business, but also you bring jobs to the community. And so it's important to highlight that. I think it's great. So many people in town love having that experience on the tavern, love having that experience in the tavern. As Mr. Kratman said, I think it'll be wonderful for folks to come back down there again. I know there was some disappointment when you closed the tavern. So this is exciting, and I appreciate your efforts to bring this forward and your thoroughness in your planning. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think all the questions are covered. I will say a few things, just comments, I guess. The country club is just simply put, it's a first-rate operation, Mr. Ginsburg, thanks to you and your family. And I would also go a step further to say, based on your work in the community, you spared no expense. You made things beautiful. So, coupled with the jobs and reopening the restaurant, like to Mr. Kratman's point, a lot of people are bummed out. So, good stuff across the board. So I'm going to pause there. And at this time, I'd like to see if there's any abutters, not residents, abutters for this particular application. And I'm trying to look here. Maybe I'll call on Brian or Jason. You guys, anyone on the phone?
We have no callers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, with that being said, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Kratman. Thank you very much. All right, let's do a roll call vote, please. So, Mr. Kratman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. Congratulations, Mr. Ginsburg. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it very much and your support. And I think
Excuse me,
you guys
Mr.
can do to get
Chairman.
us opened up. I really appreciate it. If somebody starts banging the governor's door down to get us opened up, that'd be great.
We're trying.
Excuse me,
As a matter of
Mr.
fact,
Chairman.
please, go ahead, Ms. Stronach.
So that was a motion to close the public hearing. I'd like to make a motion to approve the expanded liquor license.
Good catch.
Second.
Good catch. Good catch. I got good vibes. All right, so why don't we do that? Do I have what's the pleasure of the board for as far as the Tewksbury Country Club altercation of premise, a liquor license application?
I'll make a motion to approve the license as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion, a second by Ms. Wellman. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Kratman, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
And Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Okay, that way we did it right. Okay, thank you very much again, Mr. Ginsburg. Thanks a million, and best of luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Good evening.
We'll be banging down those doors.
Please, well, you gotta get them open first, so bang on the governor's door first.
Yeah, matter of fact, that's our next order of business. After the residents, we're going to talk about the governor's reopening plan. So it's very timely. All right, board. Okay, well, let's move in. Our next section is, I'm going to steal the ball and I'll just share very quickly. Actually, it's going to be residents, and I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Steve Sadwick. So at this point, Brian or Jason, do we have any residents that wish to speak?
We have no callers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. As always, I like to be flexible to the residents with the technology. So if we do get a resident, just let me know. And that's going to bring us to new business. And for the we have Tewksbury businesses. And what we want to do is kind of well, I'll let Mr. Sadwick kind of cue it up. But the bottom line is we met with local business leaders last week and kind of reviewed the governor's plan. And that's all we want to do here is just kind of do a quick flyby for the residents and any potential business owners in town just to get a feel of, what we're doing to reopen. So with that being said, Mr. Sadwick, I'll pass the orb to you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to run quickly through the Webex that we did last Wednesday, which was it was a Webex for reopening businesses in Tewksbury, and it was based on the information that we had at the time. When I finish that, I'll kind of talk to things that have kind of changed since Friday and yesterday. So here is the presentation from last week. We had representatives from the Board of Selectmen, Economic Development Committee, Planning Board, and the Board of Health. The question about when does a business reopen, the state has a website which has industry-specific information on it, and we have this link that this PowerPoint will be put up on the town website so that citizens and businesses can access it after the presentation. So what does a business need? There's a number of downloads that are on the state website, and starting with that first one there, which is actually the second bullet, the COVID-19 control plan template, which is a very simple template that allows them to go through the process of self-certification. And it's according to the state requirements, again, for that type of industry type, whether it be an office or if it's a restaurant or retail type operation. There's a compliance attestation poster that is supposed to be filled out. It's a one-page, again, checklist that the business would check off and then sign at the bottom, basically saying that they're certifying that they are compliant with COVID-19 requirements that are posted by the state. And then there are employer and worker posters that can be downloaded and are supposed to be displayed throughout the establishment. Again, there are these sector-specific guidelines, and they have protocols and best practices. And it's really a pretty simple, straightforward process to go through that and to try and see what you need to do to comply with these requirements. Again, all of the links to the downloads were provided. And then this just, again, goes through the steps of filling out the control plan, the attestation poster, posting, and then making sure that other general business guidance that's provided by the state is followed. When it comes to enforcement, it's a self-certifying program. So there's no need to file these with the town or for the town to approve them, nor the state. What happens is if a complaint comes in, the town through the health department would investigate the complaint. But also complaints can be filed with the state's Department of Labor and Standards. And we have had an instance or two in town where there has been a complaint that was filed through the Department of Labor and Standards. They contacted the health department, and we've been kind of working with that business. So in both instances, the enforcing agent would go out, look at the establishment's control plan, and then see how they're complying with what they said they would do on that control plan. This bit about change of service delivery, what we're trying to impress upon businesses is if you're looking to change how you're going to deliver your services to your customers, that they should contact myself, the assistant town manager. Last week, we were looking at outdoor seating and other types of creative means to serve customers. And basically what we've done is we've set up a expedited system to review concepts with departments. We do this via Webex and have had 3 or 4 of them so far, and they've all gone very well. I think both the businesses and the departments appreciate the dialogue that they're having prior to applications being made. And then we left it open for questions. There were questions. There was about, I think, 30 people that had participated last Wednesday in this, and I did get a number of responses afterwards, people following up for information. So that was the presentation. Now, what has transpired since has been the governor issued an executive order along with additional sector-specific guidance yesterday. So there's a number of additional items on the state website when it comes to what retail will be able to do. But more specifically, there was a section in that executive order, number 35, that talked about outdoor seating and temporary liquor licenses that could be issued locally without going through the state Alcohol Beverage Control Commission. So we're in a place right now where we have applications that we are taking for temporary outdoor seating. I have 3 that I have received now, and we have finally resolved this issue about the liquor licenses and how they'll be handled. The one thing in that executive order, though, was that it called out that it would expire November 1st, or when the emergency order is lifted, whichever occurs sooner. So we're trying to communicate that with the businesses right now, that we're trying to take them through this expedited process to allow for the outdoor seating. We're going to try to get them the liquor license locally, but it is a temporary situation. And so far, everyone has been very thankful that at least they're going to be able to get some tables up and running in the very near future. So I have about 10 restaurants that I've been in contact with. And like I said, we have 3 applications that have been received. So we're getting ready to process them to the next step, which is really the approval step. And the town manager and I were talking today about how that could be accomplished in an even quicker fashion. So I don't know if he wants to jump in at this point and kind of explain that.
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So we discussed today that since this is fast moving, I wasn't sure if the board would consider voting to give me the authority to approve applications for outdoor dining, as well as the service of liquor in the areas that are approved for outdoor dining. That way we can move these along faster. Without doing that, we're going to have to call for board meetings. I'm not sure how often we're going to get the applications to us and how fast we're going to want to turn them around and get board meetings scheduled. So just to expedite the process, I didn't know if the board would want to consider delegating that authority to me, and I'll report to the board on all of the applications that have been approved, any liquor service in those areas, outdoor dining that were approved. But again, this just makes us more flexible and the approval process faster for our businesses.
Okay, makes sense on my side. Why don't we open up to the board for just questions, I guess. So Steve Sadwick, thank you very much for the presentation. Seems like we're gaining traction here day by day, which is a wonderful thing. How about to Mr. Montori's point about fast tracking, having Mr. Montori for a period of time be the authoritative approver, if you would, I guess, for lack of better words, that if a license does come in, Mr. Montori can fast track it, So before we put it to a vote or a motion, how about any questions from the board to Mr. Montori?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. Thank you.
Sure, Ms. Stronach, and then Ms. Miller.
Mr. Montori, first of all, I think what is most exciting to me about this is expediting this information to businesses. So I really appreciate you doing the work and then reporting back to us. So I am in favor of that. Of the 10 restaurants that you have now, you have 3 applications pending. If, with this expedited permit, what is the time frame from the time that they would submit the application to the final approval to get them up and running for these summer months?
So if we, from our end, if the authority was delegated to the administration, then when we get the application, we will move it through the public safety departments immediately. And if it's a complete package and there are no issues from any of the public safety departments as well as the health department, I don't see why we couldn't turn something around within 24 hours. Now, if there are issues that need to be dealt with, police or fire or health, then obviously that will take longer. But again, being at our level, we'll make sure we can usher those through with Steve's guidance, within a few days.
Thank you.
The complexity of the issues.
Understood. And then my last question is, this authority that we are, would be delegating is just for these temporary licenses for the outdoor seating during this crisis, correct?
Correct. So
Thank you.
the way I would approach it is there would definitely be a time frame on this delegation of authority. And for those that come forward for their outdoor permits for seating and for service of liquor, I would encourage them to put together, if they're interested in this continuing longer, then they should put together now a package to present to the Board of Selectmen for long-term approval of outdoor seating and a long-term approval of their liquor license. So because mine is only temporary, they should, the last, previous item on the agenda, Mr. Ginsburg had a lot of thought put into what he was doing, well ahead of the curve, and people should be doing that. So I would encourage all of them to get their paperwork together and come to the board as soon as they can for a longer term approval and commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Montori. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, perfect. I love that hand thing now. Jane's using it. Everyone's using it. It's perfect. So, Miss Wellman, you're next.
Oh, thank you very much. I think this is an interesting idea. I like the notion that we can pivot and be responsive to our businesses and respond quickly. I think trying to aggregate it and wait for another board meeting or have multiple meetings just to approve something that's relatively pro forma, I have no concern about, and I certainly support delegating that authority to Mr. Montori. He does a great job of keeping us informed about the decisions he's making. And for a temporary situation like this one is, and in certainly unprecedented times, I like the idea that we can pivot and be nimble in this regard and benefit our businesses. My only question is, if you have kind of and I can't think of a business, nothing comes to mind, but this is a for instance, if you have a business that comes forward that maybe doesn't fit your profile necessarily, how would you, or they've had problems in the past, how would you handle that? Mr. Muffler.
That's an interesting question, because I was thinking about that in regards to some of the businesses that may have abutter questions or concerns. We've had issues with noise in the past. I think we would probably work with them to allow give them the ability to serve outdoors, give them the ability to serve liquor outdoors, but with the understanding that we'll pull back the approval if we have problems. And I think, again, being in the position where with this delegated authority, I can move quicker than waiting for a board meeting in, say, a week or 2 weeks. We can act much quicker if we have issues. And I think, to your point, Ms. Wellman, I think if we do our due diligence up front, not only with the applicant, but understanding the surroundings of the neighborhoods involved, that we can try to get ahead of any potential problems before we give approval.
Yeah, and if there's a need for a hearing, I'm certainly willing to be available as I work from my house now. This is what it is. So it's like I'll be available to if there needs to be that, and I'm sure the rest of the board members would be, so motivated. Remind me again, what are the hours on outdoor dining? And entertainment is not part of the agreement, correct?
Yeah, entertainment is definitely not part of this whole package, which I'm glad you brought up, because people may try to push that envelope. It is not entertainment at all. That will require a hearing, so abutters can weigh in.
Yeah.
Steve, do you have the hours in front of you?
I don't, because it wasn't part of the executive order itself. Maybe the selectmen's policy or regulations for the outdoor dining license don't have hours either, so it may kind of be.
I think we want to stress, if I may, Mr. Chairman, we want to stress that this is outdoor dining. This is not an outdoor bar.
Right. And people may not want to eat. People may not want to eat inside if they're getting eaten by bugs and so forth. I don't know, but we may need to consider that there should be, no seatings after a certain time or something like that, or I don't know, some information about that, because I can see some abutters being concerned if people are eating outside at 10 o'clock and they're near a condo community or something like that. So that would be.
No, that's a good idea. We can see what other communities are doing, and we'll try to mirror them.
Sure. All right, thank you. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kratman or Mr. Brian Dick, I think I just have one thing, but I don't see your hand up. But Mr. Kratman or Mr. Brian Dick, any questions for Mr. Montori or Steve?
I got one question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please.
Mr. Montori, I heard this was coming through on Monday, and I took the liberty of going to take a tour of a couple of places over the border in New Hampshire, and it was sad to see so many Massachusetts plates at every place right over the border. I drove by at least 7 places, and I didn't see one New Hampshire plate eating at the restaurant. It seemed like everybody was from Massachusetts. So I'm glad this came through from the governor's office. Do we know? I'm sure it seems like New Hampshire's moved a little bit quicker on ours. So not only can we look at what we're doing in the surrounding cities and towns, but maybe what New Hampshire seems to be doing. I'm thinking Salem and Nashua, something close by. Seems like a lot of the restaurants that have been there for a long time, big time restaurants, talking like, Longhorns, those big establishments, those type of things, Outbacks, they all seem to set up tents and those type of things. And they have the seating and they have the throwaway menus and all those type of things that goes into it. Do we have specific guidelines now with this outdoor seating from our Board of Health of what needs to be done? And it seemed like everything that they were serving in these places were in takeout containers. They weren't even using plates. It seemed like a lot of things were being they served you, and they expected that once you ate outdoors, you were to take whatever you had with you, so that there wasn't something being transferred in and out of the restaurants and those type of places. So if we could look into those specific guidelines of how and what, and I'm just trying to make it easier on the business owners. They've been suffering, and it seems like you can drive 15 miles up the road and they can go to another restaurant, but yet we can't do it here. So I'm just trying to get the businesses running as soon as possible. And if we could look at their guidelines and maybe mirror something they're doing, that may be helpful as well.
It's a good idea.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, perfect. How about Mr. Brian Dick?
I have my hand up there, Mr. Chairman. I get a little, thank you. Technology is power. The two quick things. Mr. Sadwick, thanks for heading that and informing our businesses. As a business owner, I've gone to all those links and I've done all my checklists and all that stuff. The one question I had on the employer checklist that the employer must sign, I don't know if you got any questions, but there's like 4 check boxes. And the third one is about receiving training regarding social distance distancing and hygiene protocols. Was there any questions on that? Because that's very difficult for a small business, never mind a large business. But did you get any questions on that? Because I find it was very difficult for me as a small business to get that checked off.
There weren't any questions during the presentation that we did, but it is interesting. I was just reading something today. It was frequently asked questions that were posted someplace talking about how to do that type of training. I think it may have been from the State Department of Public Health, but I'm not sure where the source was. But it was basically saying that the training could be 15 to 30 minutes long at most, and it gets back to the basic hygiene of, washing your hands frequently, sanitizing workspaces, common areas on a frequent basis, and then the social distancing of 6 feet, and that masks are recommended to be worn inside of offices. But Brian, I think that stuff is on the state website. I can get that to you.
No, that's okay. I mean, I found it, they put that out there, but they really didn't give any resources on where to go. And, was there a like that, and what type of training, how deep you had to take it. Because I'll tell you what I did to make sure I am a rule follower, and I wanted to make sure all my boxes were checked. So I put on my grandmother's apron, and I brought everybody over to the sink, and we kind of all exercised that, make sure the water was hot and all that stuff. So that's my training.
It worked.
Check. So anyway, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm sure the businesses appreciate it in the community. Thanks for what you do there. Mr. Chairman, one other quick thing through you to Mr. Montori. And I agree with Mrs. Wellman to be able to pivot quickly. I totally support Mr. Montori in making that decision for the board. However, I would be available if there was a tough decision. Mr. Montori, I could be there in a second, but I can see it get a little dicey on this outside dining. So I'm sure you're going to put out exact or there's state regulations on what outside dining is in Tewksbury. And but I do agree that you've been fair since I've been on the board, been very fair and reserved on anything going on outside. You've been a guiding light for me, for the board on that. So I appreciate that. So I feel I have the utmost faith and confidence in you being able to regulate at this time for the businesses so they can get back online. Thank you very much.
Some of the same things, Richard. I know, Mr. Montori, listen, we're going to have a lot of potential gray areas, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Heck, seems like every day we're living in gray areas. So totally trust you. You have accountability and responsibility. I would just use one word: flexibility. Flexibility. I'd ask you to be very flexible. Our business owners have taken it on the chin. Our residents have been all bottled up. We've done the right thing, and now it's time to get back to business. And this is how we do this. This is our path forward. So I would have no issues whatsoever. And to everyone's point, if we need to call a quick meeting because it's a lot of gray areas, then we call a meeting and we take care of business. But other than that, I have no issues whatsoever delegating authority so we can fast track and help some of these local businesses. That's all. With that being said, do we have a motion? Or what's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to take a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the temporary approval of licenses for outdoor dining and liquor license to the town manager until June 30th of 2021. And this is for temporary licenses only.
Okay, I have a motion. Maybe we'll make an amendment here. You said 2021. Mr. Sauer, keep me honest, but did you say they had a date of November 2000, whatever it was, November 2020?
Correct. 2020. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I use 2021 is because my sense is that this will probably be expanded, and then next spring we could be having to make the same motion If we don't need the authority, we can just leave it. But this way here, it gives us the ability in the spring of next year, if we have to take action and the authorities just don't want to. But I'm happy to amend my motion to the November 2020 if that needs to be the case.
I'll
Second.
second.
It's your call.
Yeah. Second the amendment for November expiration of this year.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just to confirm, it's a motion and a second for the November 1st expiration to align with the state guidelines. I think that's what Mr. Dick was seconding, and if that's fine, I support that as well.
Okay, that's correct.
Okay.
And if we ever have to revise, to Ms. Stronach's point, because it extended, then boom, we'll revise. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. We have a second. So let's take a roll call vote. How about Mr. Mark Kratman?
I vote aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Anne Marie Stronach?
Aye.
And Ms. Jane Wellman?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Actually, now the next order of business is warrant articles. And what I'd like to do, I think Mr. Sadwick is going to cover a few. So, Mr. Montori, I think you're going to go ahead and share the warrant articles. And what I'd like to do is see if we can't touch Mr. Sadwick's piece and get him out of here. I mean that in a good way.
Thank you.
Or you can stay, Steve, the whole time. It's up to you.
So we're going to jump to Article 27 on what is page, I believe, 36, maybe? Did everyone see that?
No, not yet, Richard, I think.
All right, hold on. I'll go back and do it.
Yep, can't see it. I'm sorry. I have it in front of me.
Jay, do you need to shift it to him?
I got it.
Yeah, coming at you. Beautiful.
How's that? Can you see it now?
Yep,
Okay.
it's got it. Thank you.
So Article 27, Steve, I'll turn it over. Steve's going to handle Article 27 and 28.
All right, so Article 27 is obviously the complete recodification of the zoning bylaw. I think the Board of Selectmen is aware that this journey started 3.5 years ago, I believe. The board appointed the committee to do this and go through the zoning bylaw with consultants. And this looks like, the language here looks like the mail-out version of the warrant, which basically talks about replacing in its entirety the current bylaw that's on file with the town clerk, and the Appendix A section of the bylaw with what is going to be presented at town meeting. These bullets here talk about what was really accomplished in this whole effort of recodifying the zoning bylaw and updating it. There's a number of definitions that have been changed in the bylaw, brought them up to date. We've provided consistency with current state law. There was a lot of redundancy and unnecessary provisions that were in the zoning bylaw. What happened was over time, the zoning bylaw evolved probably over a 15-year period with multiple amendments, and it started to become very disjointed. We had different models of different things that were dropped into the zoning bylaw with the best of intentions, but it just became somewhat unwieldy. So the whole purpose behind this was really to try and reorganize it, update it, and better serve both the residents, the businesses, abutters, and anyone that was looking to do things with their property. So we did put in provisions for site plan review, which is something that we do not have in our current zoning bylaw. There's also the ability to request reasonable accommodations to be compliant with American Disability Act requirements. The current zoning bylaw, if you remember, allows for recreational marijuana establishments excluding retail because of what was done at the last town meeting. we don't have anything in the current zoning bylaw to address how those would be handled. So that's in this new version of the bylaw. The bylaw mandates 15% affordable housing in multifamily developments, which has been a big sticking point in town for a number of years now. All multifamily developments are capped at 7 units per acre, except in the town center and mixed-use business district. This has kind of been a problem that we've run into, is the overlays on Main Street were put there to encourage development during the last economic downturn, and there were no caps as far as density was concerned. So we had some projects that came in a lot more dense than what was expected. And then the sign bylaw has been updated to comply with recent Supreme Court decisions. And I think it's a lot more user-friendly than what we have today. Go through the existing zoning bylaw is a little bit challenging when we're looking at the signs. I also wanted to point out that we've included small cellular antennas outside of the town's right-of-way. If the board remembers, you passed guidelines and kind of have control now for small cellular antennas within the town's right-of-way, but there's a concern about what happens outside of the right-of-way. So that's now included as a component of this draft zoning bylaw. The last thing I think I wanted to point out was that we did reorganize a lot of design standards also and pulled them all into one section. Again, we had in different sections of the zoning bylaw, you would find buffers for some types of developments, and then you would have to go to another section of the zoning bylaw. All of that is pulled together now under one section that is just called design standards. So for all of those reasons, I believe that this effort will benefit the town for years to come. And I will be working on my presentation for the Finance Committee for their public hearing, and also the Planning Board's public hearing, which is coming up this Monday.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Now, typically, just for the residents and for our board, typically we have a number of options when we review an article. We can recommend to adopt, we can recommend not to adopt. And actually, Ms. Wellman, keep me honest here because you're very good at this, being a moderator with experience. We can table it if we need more time for whatever reason. And I think maybe a fourth option is we can always defer it. And sometimes in instances like this, we might defer to the planning board again, just as we go through these. So those are the four kind of potential votes we can take that get on record. Ms. Wellman, did I cover all four, I think?
I think you did. Typically with zoning questions or anything that's sort of in the purview of the planning board, typically the Board of Selectmen defers. However, in this case, because it's not just a planning board matter, but it's also the whole bylaw, the zoning bylaw. And so I think that there is some provenance for the Board of Selectmen weighing in on it one way or another for the guidance of town meeting. So we don't have to, we can wait to see what the hearing the Finance Committee does before we take a stand on this particular issue. If that's something that the board is interested in, we could do that and make a recommendation one way or another. We don't have to do it tonight, but I think it's something that might be within the board's interest to speak out on one way or another. So just my 2 cents, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Ms. Wellman, for clarification. So why don't we do this? Any questions for Mr. Sadwick? So why don't we start with, let's start with Mr. Kratman. Again, this is specific to Article 27. Let's pose our questions to Mr. Sadwick, and then, like I said, then we'll see what the pleasure of the board is. So Mr. Kratman.
I don't really have any questions, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to make the point that this committee was put together by the Board of Selectmen to come up with these zoning changes. So I do think it would be something that the Selectmen would make some sort of motion or at least make some type of recommendation. The fact that we put them together requesting them to come up with these changes, it was something, it was an idea of the selectmen to put together. So they've done what we've asked them to do, and they've made the recommendations, and now we're going to go to town meeting with it. So I, for one, would like to at least let it be heard by the selectmen. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. Yep, we can. Yep, and when we'll get to that point when we'll open up to the board for a motion. So how about Ms. Stronach? Questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am of the mind that I would like to see the presentation for the Finance Committee in. I like Ms. Wellman's talk about tabling this. And if we did table it, we would take this up prior to our meeting at town meeting, correct? I just want to be sure that that's what we would be doing, would be just tabling it right before the meeting. We would still be making a decision. This has been an article that I think has been long coming. I agree with Mr. Kratman. We've asked the committee to do this. I think that they've been working on this for several years now, and I certainly appreciate all the time, effort, and work that's gone into this. It's a very complex article, and I would love to just get more information before I actually make a decision one way or the other to vote on the article. So I appreciate Ms. Wellman's approach. Thank you.
Thank you. How about Mr. Brian Dick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just no questions, Ms. Sadwick. I had plenty of time to go to one of your presentations and ask those questions if I felt the need to. So just, I'd like to vote on this, and the reason for that is, I mean, just in the executive summary alone, 30 public meetings, 7 public presentations, 3-year process. Mr. Sadwick's been on this. There's been land use planning, land use legal, and design consultants all on this. I think the time is now to move forward. Like Mr. Kratman said, the selectmen put together this committee 3, 4, a long time ago, I guess, but I'd like to move forward with it. I'm fine with doing that. I'd like to bring it to a vote tonight, and at least I'd like to make a motion for adoption. That's I'll put that on the table.
To recommend
Okay.
adoption.
I'll just add.
Recommend adoption. Thank you.
Second.
Okay. So I have a motion and I have a second. I will add some comment here. I think to Ms. Stronach's point, this is very, very confusing stuff. And this is very, very meaningful to the direct abutters that this will impact. So you may or may not be a direct abutter. I can tell you, I'm still taking questions from these weekly as we get more steam, into town meeting. So, we're still getting questions on these because folks know it's coming, it's coming down the pike. And I know with all those meetings and all the advertisement we have done, we're going to get questions at the last second, and heck, we are getting questions in the last second, but anyhow, but there's a motion on the table and there's a second. Any other further comment? All right, let's take a roll call vote. What is the pleasure of the board? So the motion is the recommendation for adoption. So why don't we start at the top? Mr. Kratman.
I vote aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
No.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
And the chair votes no, but it's 3-2, so the recommendation stands for adoption. All right, Mr. Sadwick, do you have another article?
The next article was relative to the zoning map, which is Article 27. That what happens is if Article 27 is approved, then we would take up the vote for Article 28, which is the companion zoning map piece. Within the text of the zoning bylaw, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sadwick, but so let's say again, I'm just playing this through here. If Article 27 gets passed, doesn't Article 28? Isn't it kind of like imprudent on us to also pass 28 to reflect the changes in Article 27?
Correct. It is, but
Okay.
we had to do them separately.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so the map is
Okay,
done as a
okay.
follow on. Yep.
Makes sense. So just if Article 27 passes, you'd have to update the map, and that's Article 28. Okay, makes sense. Any questions from the board?
No,
What
I'd
is the pleasure?
just like to make the same comments, pretty much, what my colleague, Mr. Dick made. There's been a lot of time put into this. This is not the approval from the Board of Selectmen. This is to bring it to town meeting, let the residents make the final decision. And I think the time over 3 years of investment, we put this committee together, and I think we told them when we originally that to expect a 6-month to be working on something like this, and that was well over 3 years ago. And I think a lot of time and patience by this committee has been put in, and I would like to at least let their voice be heard. They did a lot of work on this, meeting after meeting after meeting. We've changed what we've asked them to do numerous times to design this, and I think it's time to be heard. Let the residents have a say. They can make comments and amendments and everything else at town meeting, but I think enough work has been over 3 years of time to put something this together. I think the residents deserve to have a say in this. They've been asking for a change to our zoning bylaw for years. I've heard a lot of residents unhappy with the way some things have been developed. Nothing is perfect, but I think it's time to, the time and investment that they put into this is really been unique. And once again, I believe as well that we'll have the other public meetings and we can have the hearings and the residents can come to those meetings as well and be heard. But I think this should go forward to our town meeting and let the residents have a say. That's all I have,
Mr.
Mr.
Kratman,
Chairman.
that's fair. No, that's fair. But just again, this is just me personally. I'm not going to take a vote on something if I don't have answers to questions. But no, that's fair. I think we're on the same page. So, any other questions for Mr. Sarek on Article 28?
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Thanks. So just one quick thing. We have a note from Brian Dorrington that our resident has called in.
I got that. Yeah, no, let's stick with Article 28, and then we're going to bounce back to the resident section, so we're good.
Okay.
And if a resident's calling in, this is not a public hearing for the warrant article. So if a resident's calling in and they have a public comment, that's fair, but we're not going to talk about these articles. That's all. They can certainly make their public comment.
Okay.
That's it.
Can Mr. Montori put Article 28 up on the screen?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Map, just so that folks can see it. The folks at home. So I think that I just want to recognize that I think that there's been a tremendous amount of work put into this by a lot of people, and that doesn't necessarily, just because a lot of work has been put in, doesn't necessarily mean that you pass it because a lot of work has been done. I think the work is good. I think it does update our bylaws, and it's desperately in need of that update. But I also want to just extend to my fellow board members who are not ready to vote in favor of this, that I understand that, and I think that I have no issue with that vote. Not that you need it, but I think it's important that we're all comfortable with the way that we move forward with any matter on the warrant. So I do vote. I am supporting Article 28, just as it's congruent with Article 27. I think that there's a lot of goodness here that helps us build as we look forward to more work in the 21st century here in Tewksbury. Excuse me. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Sarek, I just thought of something. Maybe I almost call it like a heat map. Is there any way, maybe, again, just food for thought, I think it would maybe help the residents if we have the town of Tewksbury, the draft proposed zoning for 2020, maybe we have what's current, so we'll have a picture of what's current versus this one here. I don't know how much workers involved. I know we're kind of at the 11th hour here, but I don't know if that's possible. We must have the current map. We must have a current map, correct?
We do. I can talk with staff about doing that. I don't have that level of expertise in mapping, but I can check with them.
Okay. We've all seen it before. I'm sure we have a map and maybe just a handout. Okay. So regarding Article 28, any other questions or comments for Steve? What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Article 28.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Kratman?
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
No.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well, just because it piggybacks right into Article 27. Okay, so the recommended, it passes, so recommended for adoption for the board. Okay, guys, I'd like to pause very quickly. We do have a resident on the line again. Just going to take public comments. So do we still have the resident on the line, Brian? I don't see.
I told the resident I would call him, so I'll give him a call right back, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, why don't we do that? And while we do that, Mr. Sadwick, is there anything else on your end to cover?
No, I think that was it as far as the warrant was concerned, and then the business reopening stuff. So I think I'm good.
Okay, if you'd like to, thanks a million, Steve. I know it's late on your side, so thanks a million for joining. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, very good. All right, Mr. Montori, why don't we start at the tippity top there, and when the resident does come in, well, let's pause and give the resident that respect, okay?
Mr. Chairman, the resident is on the line right now.
Okay, for the resident, can you just clearly speak your name and address, please, for the record?
Yes, George Ferdinand, 56 Pratt Street.
Hey, Mr. Ferdinand, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Chairman Kelly, I want to just mention on the, I moved to the town in 2014, and I looked at the town and checked up the master plan that was up to date to 2013, 2014. And I talked to Mr. Sadwick, one of my first things, and I said, what's up next? The zoning bylaw update? And he said, yeah, we'd like to do that. So we talked about it, and I put in a formal request. What I wanted to say is this is almost 5 years later with all the meetings, and I think it's time we get it in front of the people. You know, we've all had time to ask questions, and each one of us are going to like parts of it and not like others, but it's time to move forward. Thank you very much. Have a great night, folks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferdinand. Okay, perfect. All right, Mr. Montori, why don't we start for Article 1?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Article 1 is a standard article each year, basically for the election, to choose the necessary town offices that are on the ballot for the election.
Any questions from the board? What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to adopt, make a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Mr. Kratman. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Kratman?
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article 2.
Article 2 fixes the salaries for the elected officials for FY21.
It's the pleasure of the board.
Motion to adopt Article 2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article 3.
Article 3, Mr. Chairman, is the consent calendar, which has 4 articles within the consent calendar. First is to accept the annual report of the town, which was actually uploaded to the town's website today. The second article allows the town manager to enter into lease purchase agreements. Third is the authorization of Chapter 90 funds to be spent by the town. And then the final article is reauthorizing all of the revolving funds that we have in the community. In regard to the revolving funds, I'll send the board out the balances in each of those funds at the end of the week. But this is a standard article that we have every year on town meeting.
Okay, perfect. You caught my question on the revolving funds. You know, what do we have in there? And regarding the revolving funds, should we look at any, well, obviously we're not going to do it this go around here, but just food for thought here for future meetings here. Do we have to up any of these, potentially lower any of these based on history? But I appreciate you getting us the expenditures in FY19.
Yeah, I think the levels are fine the way they are right now. We did up them in the past, specifically the Council on Aging's revolving fund, but the rest seem to be in order, and we review them every year. But right now, I think going into FY21, they're okay.
Okay, excellent. Questions from the board on Article 3?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 3.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Kratman. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan Dick.
Aye.
Miss Anne Marie Stronach.
Aye.
And Miss Wellman. Chair votes aye as well. Unanimous. Article 4.
Article 4, Mr. Chairman, is the adoption of the FY21 general fund budget. A list of the budgets are included in the warrant. The total budget, recommended budget for FY21 is $121,560,466. That's an increase over FY20 in the amount of $3,744,908. That increase includes, I'm just going to go to the end of this budget. That increase includes school budget increase of $1,478,512, an increase to Shawsheen Tech assessment of $330,661, an increase to the town budget itself of $985,676, and then debt service, non-exempt debt service for the town increased $1,326,171 specifically for future debt service of a new DPW school maintenance facility. The budget has no new positions within it. It's a level service budget. The bottom line has not changed since I presented it in January. There are some adjustments within different budgets, but the bottom line has not changed.
Okay. The standard question, and again, I'm just going to, if everything passes, a very common question from the residents, if everything passes, do we have, I don't know if you have the totals now, but what's the dollar increase, and then coupled, what's the percentage increase year over year, Mr. Montori?
So the increase from a dollar standpoint to the average household of valued at $433,362 is $182.01. That's if all of the values remained the same, the split remained the same, and the percentage of values from commercial to residential stayed the same as they are right now. So again, that increase would be $182.01, and that's approximately a 3% increase.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, at this point, I'd like to open up the board for questions. Ms. Stronach?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Montori, I just want to, first of all, thank you and your team, as well as the Finance Committee, for all the work that was put into the budget and the multiple meetings that you had with me to go through this line by line. I certainly, I know that you've done that with all of us, and I certainly appreciate the work that shows up on just a few pages is almost represents about 9 months worth of work from you and your team, as well as the input from the Finance Committee. My question to you is that this budget does not represent, and I know that you spoke about this a couple of meetings ago, does not represent any changes in potential state aid that would be coming through. And I applaud you taking that measure rather than taking a shot in the dark. But if you could just speak to that so that residents are aware that we could potentially vote this, and then we could be potentially having to make some adjustments based on whatever the state funding mechanisms will be, because as it is stands on June 2nd, we are unclear what that is, correct?
That is correct. So the approach that we have taken with this budget, and it's something I've discussed with the board in previous meetings, and I had the same discussion with the Finance Committee, that no changes would be made to the budget itself. No changes would be made at this time to our revenue estimates regarding local receipts or state aid. We're going to wait until most likely after July 1st, when we have a better understanding on how our local receipts were collected, what the actual local receipts that we collected are. We'll have a better understanding of what state aid will be in FY21, what our new growth will actually be in FY21, and then at that point, any adjustments that we'll need to make, we can make once and bring them forward at October special town meeting. In preparation of any type of reductions, a spending freeze has been put in place that both the town and the school side are abiding by, that only essential spending will take place. All capital has been frozen, so any capital that is within the budget will be held until we have a better understanding of where our revenues are, so we can make an adjustment easily if need be.
Thank you. That's very helpful, and I do appreciate that approach. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
I think we lost our chairman.
I'm wondering.
He's not showing up in the participant as being on or muted, or so we may have lost him.
He said he was having bad issues earlier.
I would suggest that Mark jump in as the.
Let's say, so until the chair comes back in, I will jump in.
Thank you.
Do we have any other selectmen that have any questions or comments to this that we'll listen to at this time?
Yes.
Ms. Wellman?
Thank you. So, Mr. Montori, if you wouldn't mind, just what this goes to the levy limit, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I think that the approach is pragmatic. Do we know at this time how our payments and local receipts are, if they're lagging? I know that we had taken a vote some months ago to delay payments to June 1st for taxes and fees and so forth. So I was wondering if we have any sense of where that stands, if we can get that information. It doesn't really affect this, but certainly it would be an indicator of what our deficits may be.
Yeah, I can get the board an update through May 31st. I was looking at it the other day. Our receipts seem to be coming in well. We're going to meet our projections, but there are going to be areas next year that we're going to have to seriously look at and probably make some adjustment to in regard to the hotel motel tax, in regard to the meals tax. What was interesting is our motor vehicle excise tax. Although we're going to exceed our projection, it looks like we're going to probably take in less than last year. The commitment this year was 100 to $150,000 less than the previous year. There were some changes at the registry this year on how in their software, so I'm not sure if there's a lag. But areas like that, we're going to have to take a serious look at once our revenues are finalized. But right now, we should be okay for FY20. But I'll get the board an update on those numbers.
Well, and I know that residents, thank you for that. I know that residents are reading the same news stories that I'm reading when you see communities like Brookline or Brockton. So in very different sort of income brackets, if you will, talking about major cuts that they're looking at in their budgets, and they're looking a lot at their school budgets. So that's a concern. That's a major concern for myself, anybody in the community, of course, and anybody on this board, I'm sure. So, that's kind of the stuff that makes me pause. And so if I don't know what other towns are doing, if this is a posture that other communities like ours are doing, where they're not able to project or not looking to make those kinds of projections right now. And if we think we'll see those over the summer evolve as, the state passes the budget and, so just if you could speak a little bit to that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
No, you brought up a great point, because I'm seeing those same articles and I'm immediately going to them saying, okay, what am I missing? So some communities, I would say the communities are split. Some are making cuts right now. I know of one community that I've talked to that made 20% cut in their state aid, used their stabilization fund to make up for what they feel are going to be revenue losses. Other communities have made less cuts, but I would say a majority that I've spoken to are just sitting tight and waiting, doing what we are doing. When I look at some of the places that have made cuts, a lot of it's been because they have self-sustaining revolving funds that are mostly recreation driven, that they're not seeing the revenue come in because they're not having, the camps aren't starting, they're not doing camps, programs didn't take place, so they didn't have revenue to support the staff, the expenses, so they made cuts now in anticipation of having an issue down the road.
Yeah.
So every community has had a different story. Brookline, when I saw $12 million being cut, it was an extremely large number, obviously. Then I looked at the Brookline budget, and it's about $324 million. I understand they did a lot of restructuring and adjustments within their school department to do that. So every town is just taking a different approach, and some may have reasons that may not even be affected by COVID-19. They could just be budgetary problems that they had. So I think we're consistent with more communities than not. But every time an article comes out like that, I jump to it too.
And I appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk about a little bit of the philosophy and give us some sort of framework to assess as we go forward. So thank you very much for that.
All right, any other questions for Article 4? What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 4.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call. Mr. Kratman, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Vote aye.
Ms. Stronach?
I vote aye.
Ms. Jane Wellman?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Unanimous.
Okay, Article 5.
Please.
Article 5 is to raise and appropriate funds in the amount of $6,623,932 for the sewer enterprise fund. This budget has not changed since I presented it in February. It has a total increase between the budget, actually has a decrease between the budget and indirect expenses of $79,630 from the previous fiscal year. This budget is supported by sewer rates, which will not have an increase in FY21.
Mr. Chairman,
Questions from the board?
I make a
Please.
motion to recommend adoption of Article 5.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman?
I vote aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Article 6 is raising and appropriating 7 million. Hold on. Sorry about that. $7,346,811 for the Water Enterprise Fund. This budget, again, has not changed since I presented it in February. It has an increase of $184,163. This fund is supported by water rates, which will not be increasing in FY21. And this fund does have 2 additional positions recommended within the budget for water treatment plant operators, operators in training. We need additional operators at the plant because we don't have a large staff. And even during this most recent crisis, we were concerned that if we had any problems with any of our operators, it could affect the operations of the plant. So this is a way to get more support for staffing in the, at the water treatment plant in case we, we have retirements or people out sick or run into a crisis. But again, there will be no water rate increase, and the budget has not changed since I presented it.
Questions, comments from the board?
I make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 6.
Second for discussion.
Please.
Mr. Montori, when you're saying that these 2 new positions, we would have to fund those positions with overtime if we had absences, given the nature of the treatment plants. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just want to make sure that people understand that. Thank you. I know we've been working on that for quite some time over there. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, I have a motion. I have a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman?
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Article 7, Mr. Chairman, is to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,162,940 for the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. This fund was approved at October town meeting. The fund is supported by a stormwater fee that the board adopted back in February. The fee is an average, has a fee of $75 per residential home. It'll be higher based on the size of the commercial property. We expect it to generate $1,190,700 to support the budget. And the budget is strictly expenses and capital expenditures. There are no salaries or indirect costs built into this enterprise.
Questions, comments from the board? Mr. Montori, for this one here, I guess. Mr. Kratman?
No, that was me, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I don't have any questions or comments.
Okay. I just have a quick comment, then we can take a motion here. So, Mr. Montori here, this one here, keep me honest here, the bill has not, the fee has not gone out to the residents as of yet, correct?
It has not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. This one here, I know we spent a lot of time on this one in the winter here. Seems like years ago, but I just want to be very careful here. It's an enterprise fund, and like you manage all budgets, I want to make sure that whatever that fee is, if I want to make sure that we keep it very tight and there's not a lot of fat left in that budget, I guess, for lack of a better word. So this is a new enterprise fund. There's going to be a fee. This is going to be a fee. I just want to make sure that we keep a very close pulse on this one here. you know, and if we need to drop the fee because we're not spending those pennies, then it's in our best interest to do that. I just want to call it out because this is a new enterprise fund for our community, for the residents.
Point well taken, Mr. Chairman. If you look, as you can see from the article, we're only projecting a $27,760 surplus if all the revenue comes in as projected. If our surplus is much greater than that, then obviously we'll adjust when we bring this forward next year.
Okay, well, it's a good thing. It's a brand new, you know, all the numbers are nice and fresh, so we have a nice little baseline. All right, with that being said, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recommend adoption.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, second from Ms. Wellman. All right, roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Article 8 is raising and appropriating $392,219 for our cable television enterprise fund, which supports our telemedia department. These funds are supported by our Verizon and cable franchise fee and PEG access funding that we receive. We project $600,000 to come in, and as you can see, we spend well below that. And again, this supports the operations and any capital expenses for the telemedia department.
Questions, comments from the board?
I have a question to the town manager. I know this budget was put together a little while ago, and seeing that we have, we're going to be using the, seems like video and telecommunications for quite a while, moving forward to do these type of meetings and to have public distancing. Is anything changed with that, or is it, or do we feel comfortable with the way the budget is for these type of meetings?
So, and thank you for bringing that up because it just reminded me, this budget was adjusted by $9,000 since it was brought forward in February. And the $9,000 adjustment was specifically for that, Mr. Kratman, to allow the telemedia department to continue with these type of virtual meetings and any other equipment or software needed to continue like this.
Thank you for
Great
that
call out, Mr. Kratman. Yep, great call out, Mark. Okay, that being said, what's the pleasure of the board?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Yeah, so Mr. Montori, this is a little bit of a foolish question, but if you can just explain what we do with the surplus. Do we roll it back into the account, and what's the balance? And then is there any? This is sort of a different question, but it'd be great if we could brand if we could brand it Tewksbury Community Television or something along those lines. It's like we're getting a lot of viewership, which is so great. And anyway, but mainly the question is what are we doing with the surpluses?
So any surplus is closed out to retained earnings. I believe we have somewhere around $1.3 million in retained earnings right now for our cable enterprise fund. And that will be used in the future for any major capital expenses that we may have. But it's also going to help us in the future in case we see a change in the industry, which we're anticipating.
Yep.
With companies such as Verizon only agreeing to 5-year licenses, dropping their franchise fee from 5% to 3.5%, possible revenue decreasing for both Comcast and Verizon because we're seeing more and more people move away from cable television. So that 1.3 million or those retained earnings in the future will help continue support the department as well as any major capital. But all of the excess funds in this budget, similar to water and sewer, stay with this enterprise fund it will just be closed out to retained earnings.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful, and it's important for folks to understand that. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 7. I think we're on, or 8. Article 7.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman?
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Mr. Wellman?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well, and I'll just a quick call for Brian and Jason are on the call. We need this budget. All right, very good.
And actually, just to correct myself, we have 1.5 in retained earnings as well. Article 9 is a transfer of $95,000 from water enterprise fund retained earnings to fund the following items. The first is an F550 dump with plow package, amount of $55,000. This truck actually costs $110,000, and this cost is being split 50% for water retained earnings and 50% for sewer retained earnings. This truck is a vehicle used by both departments. It's a smaller dump that we'll be purchasing to replace 14 years old and has a blown out diesel engine. We don't want to put any money into fixing the truck because we don't believe it's worth fixing. And it's needed because all of the other trucks in the division, both divisions, are either 6 or 10 wheel vehicles, and this is a smaller vehicle that we need to have available for our use. So it's one of those capital items that when we reviewed postponing capital that the DPW asked that we bring forward because we need to replace that vehicle. The other is a risk and resiliency assessment / emergency response plan that we're required to develop per EPA. We're on a tight time frame to get the plan developed. We're going to hire a consultant, Weston and Sampson, to do it for us. And essentially, this is a plan that outlines the risks and vulnerabilities within our water treatment plant and understand what we need to do to ensure that we can address any issues during a natural disaster or a crisis within our water system. So this is important for us to just plan for the future and be able to react when we have emergencies. And again, this is coming from water retained earnings. There's about $1,050,000 in water retained earnings to utilize towards this funding.
Questions, comments from the board for Article 9?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a recommendation to adopt Article 9.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kratman. Let's move to roll call. Mr. Kratman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Thank you. Article 11 is a borrowing article. Actually, Article 10 is it's a sewer enterprise. I have that backwards.
Article 10 split. It's Article 10 splitting the cost for Article 9, right?
10,
The truck is.
yeah. Article 10 is the other split of the enterprise for the sewer enterprise portion of the vehicle.
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation to adopt, I make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 10.
I have a motion.
I'll second that.
I have a second from Ms. Stronach. Mr. Kratman, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Vote aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article 11.
Article 11 is a borrowing article in the amount of $1.5 million for water distribution projects throughout the community. Specifically, this funding will be used for upgrades of the water distribution system, mainly in the Bay State Road neighborhood. This funding has already been accounted for within the Water Enterprise Fund debt service and has been accounted for within the water rates, which again will not have an increase in FY21. When I projected the debt service for the 1.5 million, I believe I used 3.5% as a projected interest rate, and I think interest rates right now are somewhere around 2 to 2.1%. So we should see a benefit.
Questions from the board, comments? It's the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Article 11.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brian Dick. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
I vote aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Article 12 is an article we've had on the annual town meeting warrant for the past few years, transferring funds from a bond premium of a previous bond issue to reduce exempt debt. This year, we're reducing exempt debt $55,113.92. And this type of article will continue for the next several years as we continue to reduce exempt debt with it.
Questions, comments from the board?
I just want to say that this is one of my favorite articles because I love it when we can lower our debt. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to recommend adoption of this article.
Have a motion for a second. Second by Mr. Brian Dick. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Article 13 is another article that we have each year. This is to transfer $52,500 from overlay surplus to fund the senior tax relief program and veterans tax relief program. Last year was the first year we increased the amount from $25,000 to $52,500. We're asking for a similar amount, and this will fund the seniors who work in various departments and receive $1,500 towards their taxes.
Questions from the board?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Article 13, please.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Stronach. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Jane Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article 14.
Article 14 is the annual Housing Trust Fund allocation plan, essentially outlining the balance in the account for the year and then setting it aside for the board to utilize for the creation of units.
Questions, comments from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Mr. Montori, you are not expecting any funds going into this for FY21. That's what this is telling us, correct?
In FY21, there will be some funding, I believe, transferred from the Community Preservation Fund. And then other than that, I'm not anticipating any others.
And could you just explain what the process is for us to spend this money so that people understand that, you know, in the event using similar to, you know, the Habitat project that we've funded in the past, maybe?
Yeah, so mainly these funds have come from a payment in lieu of building affordable housing by developers. They pay a fee to the planning board that goes into this fund. And over the years, it's built up because it's just built up because of the number of units that have been built in the community and the ability for developers to pay into the fund and not build the affordable housing. We've used it in the past to fund Habitat for Humanity projects. We've used it in the past to purchase affordable units and multi-unit developments. And over the next year, there will probably be other Habitat build or Habitat for Humanity type developments that we may ask the board to help fund, but that's mainly what we've used it for. But it is available if there's any larger vision projects that the Board of Selectmen or the Housing Partnership may have.
That was going to be my own comment here. You know, we're sitting at close to about $5 million. I like to, it's really not for this meeting, but I like to see if we can't be proactive and use these dollars wisely so that we get up to that certain percent and we don't have folks coming in and doing the same. So, but that's a different meeting. So what's the pleasure of the board?
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 14.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second by Ms. Wellman. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Article 15 is the Community Preservation Fund annual revenues for FY21 and the administrative costs that we'll set aside. We're projecting that we will have estimated CPA revenues of $1,076,456.66. Project allocating the funding 10% for open space, 10% for historic preservation, 10% for community housing. And this article just outlines the allocations.
Questions, comments from the board? Pleasure
Yes,
of the board.
Chairman. I have a question. If the 10 measures, it's in the executive summary regarding the historic preservation is for the town hall rehab project. From back when.
All of that goes directly to that.
Yeah, and that's at 10%. That's. I would make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 15.
I'll second
I have a
that.
motion. I have a second by Mr. Kratman. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye as well.
Okay. Article 16 is a community preservation fund article in the amount of voting to appropriate $40,000 from the open space reserve to be used for improving, expanding existing trail network within the town as well as existing open space. This came about from discussions with members of the Open Space and Recreation Committee. One individual in particular who is part of not only the committee but part of a nonprofit in town that does a lot of volunteer work on the trails. And there is a fair amount of work that is outlined in our Open Space and Recreation Plan. And this $40,000 will supplement some funds that were already approved for this type of work to repair boardwalks, build bridges, clear trails, and make them safer and easier for residents to utilize.
Yeah, I can maybe just to jump in before we take a vote if the board has questions. I mean, I cannot tell you the amount of work, and I'll call him up, Mr. Bruce Schick, and I know he's worked collectively with the Open Space Committee here to have a laundry list of improvements they want to do across town for all the different trails. And this doesn't scratch the surface, but it's a pretty darn good start here. So this is a big one. I'm very hopeful it passes. So with that, say any questions or comments from the board for Article 16?
Motion to recommend adoption.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, sorry, Mark.
I'll take that. That's okay. I'll take that from Mr. Kratman. So roll call vote. Mr. Kratman,
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick,
Aye.
Ms. Stronach,
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article 17.
Article 17 has to do with a drainage easement that we received from Cube Smart on Woburn Street. After addressing drainage in that area, we no longer need the easement, so this article will terminate the easement since it's no longer needed.
Questions from the board? It's the pleasure of the board.
Make a motion to adopt Article 17.
Second.
Motion and a second from Ms. Wellman. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman,
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick,
Aye.
Ms. Stronach,
Aye.
Ms. Wellman,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. Article 18.
Article 18 authorizes the Board of Selectmen to sell these parcels of land per the town's bylaw. These are parcels that abutters have requested the town to sell to them, to add to their lots or their existing lots. So each year we try to go through the list and bring them forward to town meeting. We'll sell these through the standard process for selling land to abutters. It's a modified RFP process or a bid process. And we'll do that sometime over the summer if this is approved.
Questions, comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question, comment on this. Mr. Montori, these parcels, these were probably parcels that were taken as easements or during construction phases or some sort of type of thing that we took while we were doing a roadway widening or some sort of project, and they have absolutely no use to the town, and probably we've just haven't used or maintained any of it for numerous years, and it just happens to be a parcel next to a residence that's looking to increase their lot size. Is that correct?
That's correct, and you bring up a good point, Mr. Kratman. We ask all of the departments if any of these lots are needed in any way by the town, and they all tell us no. And they're just better off being, and we've acquired them in different ways that you outlined, and they're just better off going back on the tax rolls and not being something that we need to maintain.
And to that point, not that they're very large lots, but they could be something that could help somebody, say if they had a parcel and they needed to put a family suites on or something like that, where it could help somebody, a homeowner, or things like that. So I'm in full support of this. There's no need for the town to have a parcel of land that we have no use for in the first place. Our residents can use to increase their lot size and possibly use to do something like a family suites or something like that if they need it. So I think this is a great article and I'm in full support of it. With that, I'll make a motion to adopt Article 18.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brian Dick. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman,
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick,
Aye.
Ms. Anne Marie Stronach,
Aye.
Ms. Jane Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Okay, Article 19 is a fairly long article. This is an amendment to the town's general bylaws, amending the town's stormwater bylaw. The reason for this amendment to the bylaw is to make the town's bylaw consistent with our new EPA stormwater permit. By doing this, it takes away any issues that we may have between both the permit and the bylaw. It brings consistency to both. So if we have any, trying to enforce any stormwater permit issues, we don't have any conflicts between the bylaw and the permit. So the town engineer, once he got the new EPA permit, went through the bylaw and made the adjustments to make them both consistent.
Okay, and just for the residents here, Article 19 is lengthy, and we've been through it. A lot of verbiage here. So I don't know if there's any questions. Any questions from the boards? Any comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a recommendation to adopt.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brian Dick. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article 20.
Article 20 is a petition article to place certain parcels under the care and control of the Conservation Commission to promote and protect watershed resources, open space, and wildlife habitat. This is something that, again, was brought forward by residents to ensure that this land is not sold or developed. Speaking with the conservation agent, she feels it's a good idea to have this land protected based upon it being open space and the wildlife habitat that does exist. She will be bringing it forward to the Conservation Commission to get their support also, but she feels it's a piece of property that should be placed under their control. But again, it's a petition article.
Questions from the board? You said, Mr. Montori, this is going to go in front of the Conservation Commission. I'm sorry, the Conservation Commission for a vote.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
With
Montori.
that being said,
Oh.
please.
My question is, and I've sat in on some of these meetings, but why would this be brought forward as a petition article versus the town bringing it forward?
The residents probably just want to ensure it gets done. We just never had a chance to go through any of the land that we wanted to protect in perpetuity, and they just beat us to it.
Yeah, I think I've seen there's maps, and there's a number of these that are going to have to come forward over time. So I don't have any further questions with that. I make a motion to recommend adoption.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Stronach. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Article 21 and 22 are petition articles. There are no summaries on them, so.
I think we can just pass those, right? I don't think we need to make a recommendation at this point, do we?
No.
I was going to make a recommendation to make no recommendation, so I agree.
Second. I think no action,
Take that
right?
as
No
okay,
action.
no
correct.
action is a form. No action is a form of a motion. So, so Mr. Montori, keep me honest. Is that 20 and 21? I just don't see the number.
It is
It is.
20 and 21. 20.
Okay, so I have a motion.
No, it's 21 and 22.
21
Yeah,
and 22.
you advance the screen.
Oops, I'm sorry.
So we have Article 21 and Article 22. We have a recommendation for
Richard,
no
you're
action.
doing
And I
great
think,
on that.
Jeez, I keep forgetting. Jane's keeping me honest.
You're doing a good job. It's hard. So it's 21 and 22. No action is the motion that I made, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
okay, no action. And Mr. Brian Dick had a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
And Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
And that's the entire warrant. The rest, we did the consent calendar, which is Article 3, and we went through zoning with Mr. Sadler. You can move to the special if you want.
Please. How about, I'll just, quick touch point with anyone need a break? On the board? All right, I guess we're going to rock and roll. Very good.
Machine.
1 second.
Machine.
I don't know what I did.
What have you done?
I don't know.
You're sharing the wrong screen.
Hold on.
I don't know what's easier, if we do this via the Webex here or we do it at Town Hall. I think it's like 50-50.
Just got to get the town meeting warrant.
Practice makes perfect, Mr. Chairman.
Right, well, I hope the next one that we do, we're in Town Hall. I'll just say that much.
Agreed.
Okay.
I'm fine with waiting on this one.
So this is a special town meeting warrant. Mr. Chairman, I can start with Article 1 if that's okay.
Please.
So this is a standard article at special town meeting, transferring money within the FY20 budget from areas that we deem as surplus and transferring funds into line items that we're projecting as deficits. The amounts that's being transferred is $126,274. The surpluses that we're projecting a surplus in town group insurance because we don't have as many people on our plans as we projected. Town property and liability insurance has a surplus based on the premium being less than we projected and receiving some credits, higher credits than we projected. And then the North Shore Agricultural and Technical School assessment was less than we projected because the number of students going to that school were less than projected for the previous year. And just quickly going through the accounts, town hall, energy and utilities, the budget short $10,000 based upon just the bills for this year and usage. The budget just didn't have enough funding in it. Leases and contracts, $39,000. That is mainly for upgrades to the town hall and town hall annex in response to the COVID-19 crisis. Those funds are for personal protective equipment such as masks, sanitizing needs such as hand sanitizer, purchasing glass to be installed at various open counters, temporary what they call sneeze guards for the town elections. So that sanitizing buildings at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. So this $39,000 is directly in relation to response to that. Town hall repair and maintenance, the $3,119 is for a new HVAC unit at the annex. That one was replaced. Computer services equipment, $9,000. That's funding that will go towards a new server for the town computer system. The server actually will cost $16,000. This $9,000 will help be paid towards that. Town interest on bond anticipation notes. We have a bond anticipation note in the amount of $499,000 for a streetlight conversion. This is the first year interest payment on that. Going forward, that interest will be paid from the streetlight budget within the town budget because we're going to see a decrease now that the project is complete in our electricity usage and payments to National Grid. Facilities and ground salaries, there's just a budget shortage in full-time salaries. Facilities and grounds and all other, the $14,200 fund mulch for the town hall annex and Wamisit Park. Solid waste disposal, $10,000. We saw an increase in the tonnage that we sent to Covanta over the last couple of months during the COVID crisis. Our solid waste disposal contractor met with myself and other communities to tell us that they saw about a 24% increase in trash disposal during the crisis since everyone was home. And that $10,000 reflects that increase. Town hall Medicare tax is short $15,800. That's strictly a function of payroll. And then Middlesex retirement system, $9,849. We're anticipating a cost to our assessment because of employees who work for us that are on military. That's an assessment and payment of their retirement portion to Middlesex retirement. That's Article 1.
Mr. Montoya, for any of the COVID-19 stuff, I know there's been some relief packages at the federal level. I mean, can we at least document, the potential impacts of COVID-19 and see if there's another stimulus plan? I'm just thinking out loud, that's all. Because obviously, there's been stimulus plans. I want to make sure that if there is money out there because of some of the shortfalls here, that we recoup that if we can.
So, and that's an excellent point, Mr. Chairman. So we intend to seek every nickel of that amount of money, as well as any other cost that we might have incurred that didn't come up as a deficit in any of our accounts. But because we don't know when those funds will come in, I really don't want to run a deficit in any of these budgets. So I'd rather, since we can fund them within the FY20 budget, I would like to do that. And when those funds come in, whenever they come in, they will just flow to free cash, most likely.
No, and I agree with you. I agree with your strategy here. What's the saying? No good deed goes unpunished. I'd hate to kind of pay these bills, so to speak, and then not get the stimulus because we paid the bills. But, as long as you're documenting every nickel, I think that is a good strategy.
Yeah, no, we'll be able to, we're comfortable that most of these fall within the eligibility of reimbursement, and the first round of reimbursements requests are due on Friday, and these will all be put into that.
Okay, excellent. Questions, comments from the board on Article 1?
Mr. Chairman? I know that a number of these, if not all of them, will count for FEMA reimbursement, and then of the FEMA reimbursement, there's a 25% that's covered by the local municipality, and that we can use some of the CARES Act funds to contribute to, as well as volunteer resources. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to recoup these dollars down the road. But I think I concur with the town manager's pragmatism to manage these funds in this manner. So I'd make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 1.
Have a motion, have a second?
Well said, and I'll second that.
Okay, second by Ms. Stronach. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Swellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article 2. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this article reallocates $220,000 from an original appropriation of $850,000 that was approved at May 1st, 2017 annual town meeting. The purpose of the original article was for bleachers and restrooms at Doucette Field. Because of the change to that project, because of the new elementary school, the $850,000 for that project is not needed. And we would like to reallocate those funds, $220,000 of those funds, to be used at the high school for temporary locker rooms, temporary field lights, and to construct a permanent press box at the high school athletic field. And the reason for that is because since Doucette Field is being taken away for the new elementary school, and the field is not available for the high school football team to use, we need to find a new home for them because we don't have a lot of field availability for our high school sports. in order to make it work properly for fall sports, we will need to have temporary locker rooms for the football team because the locker rooms at the high school are not adequate for a sport like football. In order to allow all of the teams to have their games and practices at the high school, we'll need temporary lights. And then the press box really is something that should have been installed or should have been considered in the beginning of the when the high school field was built, to not only broadcast the games as they're going on, but also allow them to be broadcast on cable television. And unfortunately, with the situation we're in with COVID-19, I think the press box even becomes more of an asset to the community, because if parents or grandparents or others can't go to see students, student athletes perform, whether it's field hockey or soccer or lacrosse, this will be a good opportunity for us to properly broadcast them and put them on our cable television channels. So I know it's a large expense, but about half of it is for the press box, which will be permanent, and the rest will be for temporary facilities for fall sports.
Questions, comments from the board for Article 2?
I have a couple comments, Mr. Chair.
Please.
You know, I recognize this big expense and maybe some concerns around that. However, I look at this as a glass half full article. I look at this as a savings because that $850,000 wasn't spent at Doucette Field. It was thought about not spending that with the new elementary school jumping onto that field. So we didn't waste that money. So 220 is not a drop in the bucket. It's a lot of money. I understand that. I fully in favor of this. I just think that we did our due diligence on the 850, 220. What that does is it gets, you know, the coronavirus, as Mr. Montori mentioned, that press box, the COVID-19 has made something like that press box that wasn't installed originally in the main high school plan, a necessity for high school sports now. We have a great cable network that can jump in if this thing takes off again in the fall and eliminates spectators while the sports play, if they play. So there's a big cost there. The lights are a necessity to get everybody fair amount of practice time. It's not playing games, but more practice time. I mean, the football team could be on the road for every game. I don't think that's going to happen, but the temporary lights allows all the teams to be able to play and practice the way they need to be. And I think if you don't do something like this, there's going to be costs associated to busing kids around town, renting fields, things like that from other towns to accommodate fall sports. The other point I want to make is the lockers. I think the lockers, if you think about 80 kids after school, if football is a go, 80 kids getting dressed somewhere, whether, you know, if you said, they can get dressed in the high school gym, but where do they store their computers, their phones, their wallets, their keys, their, you know, the things that are important to them. So you think about lockers, security, safety, cleanliness, storage, and, you know, the football team that did get moved from Doucette Field for the new elementary school, it's just, you know, football's a unique sport where there's a little bit more equipment to deal with on a storage basis. So I think it's a good plan. The members of the field committee have weighed in on it. The creativity on financing, you know, it is a big nut, but again, glass half full, where we did not use the 850, you know, we were smart about it. So now if we take the 220 and we look at Article 3 where we can stuff the other balance into the stabilization fund, I think it's a win-win. So those are my comments. So I'm going to recommend to adopt this article, make a recommendation to adopt this article, because that's it by the town manager. Thank you.
I have some
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. Brian Dix. Please.
So thank you for that background, Mr. Dick. I appreciate that. So you explained some of the football needs. It's a large sport, lots of participation and a lot of equipment. How are the other sports impacted by these changes?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a comment on Mrs. Woolman's questions. Yeah, so having the temporary field lighting isn't going to impact any sport. It's going to allow, from what our athletic department or Mr. Ronnie Druin has outlined, if we're able to get that temporary lighting just for the fall season, we're able to make sure that field hockey, soccer, boys and girls are able to practice and play games at their home. And for example, this is going to allow a little bit more usage on that field for those 4 fall sports. So we're not going to, the plan is not to relocate anybody. So if we're able to get some, and that's the importance of the temporary lighting, Ms. Spelman. If you can get the temporary lighting, it's really about practicing and having a home, storing your equipment for all sports. And that press box, as Mr. Montori mentioned, can be a huge asset to the town in many areas within the high school sports. And, like we said in the fall, to be able to televise games, field hockey games, soccer games. So it's all sports. It's not just a football play. But
No, yeah, and I understand that's the wedge situation. So that's not a wedge situation, but that's the difference. And so I just wanted to see what the impact is, because we haven't seen that plan, and so I appreciate that. My understanding of the value proposition during the elementary school and the athletic field sort of advocacy project in anticipation of the vote last spring was that this $850,000 was going to be reallocated to the field project because we hadn't spent it and it had already been approved by town meeting in May, as the article says. And so what I'm hearing is that actually wasn't part of the value proposition. So I seem to remember that. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. But wasn't that part of the plan originally? I wanted that $850,000 to go to the athletic field. I thought that was a great idea. So am I remembering this correctly, or have we changed since then?
yeah, I mean, I think Mr. Montori could follow up my comment, but I believe that you are correct in where there was some money that wasn't spent, the $850, and it was included in the presentation, but I'm not sure if it was earmarked exactly for the field part of it. I don't think it was voted on that way.
I think you're correct.
And maybe Mrs. Tronick or Mr. Montori could jump in, but I do understand your question, because we did talk about, hey, we were, once again, frugal, we were smart with planning. There is $850 available, hopefully, or let's put it towards the field. That was some of the buy-in. And then things happen, things come up.
Sure. And so then the next Article 3, is part of that conversation, but it follows on from this one. Why are we, or this is a question for the town manager, why are we putting the balance of that funding into the general fund rather than putting it, or is that a different conversation and allocating that toward this project? I mean, we never really allocated it, I guess, in a town meeting toward this project. So, Emery, I see that you're nodding. Thank you, Ms. Roddick. So maybe that's a different discussion, or that's an amendment that could be made down the road. But I personally was interested in seeing that go to that athletic field project. And now things have changed a bit, but I do appreciate your Mr. Dick, and the work that you guys have done on your committee in explaining how you got here and how it's good for all the kids. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullin. Good questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just make a comment to that.
Please.
Thank you. First of all, Jane, your recollection is accurate, as is Mr. Dick's, but you are correct that we never actually allocated that. At that time, we basically said that we had $850,000 that we had already raised and that could be addressed at the field. And the thought process was that if that money were to, if the project were to pass, that some of that money could be used for this. Unfortunately, some of the timing of the project changed because we wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence getting the stormwater for the project accurate, which dramatically impacted the athletic components of this project. And we had not anticipated that, but we did think that it was more important to get the actual entire project done correctly than rush to get the athletics. I think that this is a good use of the $850,000 because of that. And I also noticed the same thing you did about Article 3. And what I would say is that I think that moving the remainder of that funding into the stabilization fund at this time, given a lot of the fiscal uncertainties, might be a better place because we still aren't at the end of we're at early stages of this project. And we might be better putting that in a savings bank, for lack of a better term, than allocating that to a project which we which we've already kind of bonded in, which we may be able to use in a better way because we did get a phenomenal rate on that project. So I would just offer that as my own comments.
All right, I appreciate that very much, Ms. Stronach. Thank you so much. That background is helpful.
Mr. Chairman, can I jump in one more quick comment? Just to piggyback on what Mrs. Stronach said and just to follow up Mrs. Wellman. Mrs. Stronach's 110% correct on the timetable. This wasn't something that was planned. I think originally when we were going through the subcommittees, the planning stage, the field at the new Doucette field, if you will, was going to be ready to be at least practice on at the beginning of August, September timeframe. And I think with some of the delays that Mrs. Stronach just outlined, it's pushed everything out where the anticipated schedule for the athletic field is not going to be ready until August 30th, 2021. So that's why this necessity, this need has popped up. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Kratman?
I think we've gone through this. I understand everything. I appreciate everybody's comments. And with that, I'll second Mr. Dick's amendment to this to approve Article 2.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll just comment here before we go further. Just imagine, this is a good conversation. Only imagine if we dumped that 850 in Doucette, prior to the new elementary school. So it's a good conversation to be had, and we're using the money very, very wisely, for a high school student athlete. So I'll leave it at that. So I have a motion and I have a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
That chair votes aye as well. Article 3.
Yep. So Article 3, Mr. Chairman, is piggybacks on the previous article. The balance of that $850,000, which is $630,000, will be transferred back into the stabilization. That's what this article does.
Question. Okay, very good. Questions, comments, Article 3.
I would like to make a motion to approve Article 3, recommend adoption of Article 3. I'm sorry about that.
Second.
Oh, that's perfect. I have a motion. I have a second from Mr. Brian Dick. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Mrs. Emery Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Jane Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article 4.
Well, Mr. Chairman, addresses the town's snow and ice deficit that we had in FY20 due to our snow operations this year. Each year, we set aside $600,000 in free cash at the beginning of the fiscal year to be used in the future for snow and ice deficits if they occur. This year, we have a deficit of $373,604. And we will utilize a portion of that $600,000, obviously, to fund this amount to erase the deficit.
Is this one of the first years that we never reached that 600K plateau, Mr. Montori?
It's been a couple of years since we've have been under the 600. So yes, it's been a while.
Okay, great news. Okay, very good. Questions, comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, you just jinxed us for next winter, but I'd like to make a motion to recommend adoption.
I knocked on wood, so there. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, and I knocked on wood as well.
Okay, very good. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Article
Article
5.
5 uses the balance of that $600,000 in free cash to fund the following items. The first is $45,000 for a fire administrative car. This is something that was presented by the fire chief in his capital budget this year. Again, it was one of those items that when we looked at delaying capital, he asked if there was any way this could be funded. It was needed. This car will be used by the deputy fire chief, which is administrative vehicle number 2. His vehicle will move to the fire investigator, who is currently using a 2006 Ford Explorer, which failed inspection in 2019. Obviously, a new vehicle is needed, and that's what this request is for. The next request is for $26,736 to fund the resurfacing of basketball and tennis courts at Livingston Recreation Complex. This is something that was brought forward by the facilities director in his capital. The actual amount to resurface basketball and tennis courts is closer to $36,000. So a portion of this funding will come out of the Revolving Fund. The plan is to resurface the courts and restripe them. They're in need of resurfacing to avoid any injuries. We also anticipate the outdoor courts having greater use over the summer, and they're already used a great deal. We also will stripe the tennis courts for pickleball, which is now a popular sport in the community. So that'll add another feature to the courts down there. I think 1 or maybe 2 are already striped for pickleball, but when we resurface the courts, we'll make sure it's restriped for that. The next item, $44,000 for the assessors Vision software. Right now, they're using Vision software version 6.5. The $44,000 will upgrade them to Vision 8.0. They have been told that the current software will not be supported by the software company any longer. So there is a need to upgrade the software, which maintains all of our property valuations and assessing property database. The $44,000 also includes the first year annual maintenance fee. And then finally, we're seeking funding in the amount of $110,660 to fund the design and engineering, the traffic lights at Pleasant Street and Main Street intersection. This is something that we have talked about over the last several months. And we've had discussions recently with the vice chair and the chair of getting projects ready in case any stimulus funds become available. And by doing the design and engineering of this intersection, it'll have it ready for bid. And if stimulus funds become available or TIP money becomes available, we'll be ready to go with presenting this project to the state or the federal government. Plus, this is an intersection that's long overdue for redesign and engineering, especially with the new elementary school being constructed. And those are the projects we're bringing forward with the remaining free cash.
Questions on Article 5?
Make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 5.
Second for discussion.
Please, Ms. Stronach.
I just have a question back to the news articles where people are having huge deficits. In the event that we do see significant downfalls, would any of the projects that you are looking for at free cash potentially take a back seat? I'm just wondering what your thought process is on that.
Yeah, I mean, if we haven't, with the exception of the assessors software, which is going to need to be upgraded, if we haven't started the other projects and we find out there is an issue, we can pull them back. But if we get closer to July 1st and we haven't heard anything, we may go forward with at least the resurfacing, so that could be used in the summer. The design and engineering is a phased approach to design, so we can stop that at any time that we needed to save funding. And depending again on the timing, the chief may be able to hold off.
I don't think the car can go.
With the car not passing inspection.
Yeah, that's a safety issue. I was just trying to get a thought in terms of free cash in general.
These will go forward, but there may be some flexibility in holding off for some phases on the design.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, and a motion and a second for discussion. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to make a point. I would think that pretty much everything that we have is going to come up to the same sort of thing where, if funding doesn't come available, we're going to relook at almost our whole budget. But I do like the town manager's thought process on this. Almost every time we have some sort of tragedy or some sort of thing that comes through, there's always seems to be some sort of stimulus project that goes through, and some the federal and the state government most likely is going to come up with something. And the fact that you have to do at least the 10% design for them to even put it on a tip or do the project. And Pleasant and Main Street is a real difficult intersection, as everybody knows, between the high school, the new proposed middle school, the new fire station, the new development that's proposed up at Dascom Road in Andover for Salapoli's development and truck traffic and all those type of things. I'm hoping that this funding goes forward, because I think that would be a real good use of getting the design in place. And so I'm hoping that goes forward. That's my comments on that. So I want to commend the town manager for thinking ahead in case that funding does become available.
Perfect. So I have a motion and I have a second. Roll call vote, Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Article 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an unpaid bill from the previous fiscal year. And this was another assessment for Middlesex retirement for employees that were activated into the military or deployed. As I mentioned in Article 1, that funding was in anticipation of another assessment coming forward. This article is for a previous year's assessment. That's why it's an unpaid bill. And we're taking the funds from the town's property and liability insurance account, which has excess funding because the premium was less than projected, and we had some balance of funds because of credits.
Questions, Article 6.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend adoption of Article 6.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brian Dick. Roll call vote, Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
That is it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, very good. And I guess maybe we'll just, I think we all said it maybe differently, or I'll say it a little differently. You know, we had to put these things, we're putting these things forward, you know, for a vote here in the next couple of weeks. And God forbid, you know, the revenues don't come in at the local level, the state level, stimulus isn't there. We have the ability, as Mr. Montori mentioned earlier, to put the brakes on everything. And I think it's important also to realize that a lot of this stuff here, we're not increasing taxes. You know, we have some monies available, and that's what we're using. So, but if we need to put the brakes on and call it immediate audible, you know, this team will. That's all.
Mr. Chairman?
All right, I think, please.
Thank you very much for those comments. I truly appreciate it. I also appreciate everybody's comments on what is pending and what could be. But the free cash is our rainy day fund, and I think it is going to take us, you know, some time to get through this crisis. So I just want to make people aware. I appreciate the breaks comments. I appreciate Mark's comments about the approach, because I do think it's the right approach, but that's what that fund is for. So I want to make sure that we're in a good position. Thank you.
Correct. All right, I think we have a few more orders of business. Mr. Montori, we're going to keep you going here, We have a few items under Town Manager.
Yeah, and I'll go through these quickly. But before I hit the invoice, Mr. Chairman, just to let the board know and the residents know, the town meeting warrant will be posted on Friday. We will be mailing out warrants at the end of the week to all of the residents. There will be a difference between the posted warrant and the warrant mailed to residents, and that will be for Article 27, I believe it was, for the zoning bylaw. The mailed out warrant will have a summary of the bylaw, and the posted warrant will have the full 115-page zoning bylaw in it. When we post it on the warrant on the website, both versions will be on there for each resident to look at or download if they would like. We did go up to the high school to look at the high school gym for a town meeting on June 22nd. It appears that we can fit 112 seats on the floor with proper social distancing, and we can fit another 120 residents to sit in the bleachers. I'm bringing the total to 232 for the gym, and we'll be able to take any overflow in the auditorium and in the LG 1 room with video and audio during town meeting. So I just want to pass that on so residents know that we are prepared and ready to move forward with town meeting at the end of June. Any questions on that before we move on to the invoices? Okay, so senior town council invoice, Mr. Chairman, amount of $2,284. I'd recommend approval.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Stronach.
I'll second that.
Second from Mr. Kratman. Thank you very much. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
And then, Mr. Chairman, town council invoice from April 1st to April 15th in the amount of $2,422.50. I'd recommend approval.
So moved. I'll second that, Jane.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach,
Aye.
Ms. Wellman,
Aye.
chair votes aye as well.
Then an invoice for town council from April 16th through April 30th in the amount of $2,677.50. I'd recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Ms. Stronach. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman,
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick,
Aye.
Ms. Stronach,
Aye.
Ms. Wellman,
Aye.
chair votes aye as well.
And then finally, the last invoice from May 1st to May 15th for town council in the amount of $2,677.50. I'd recommend approval.
Second that, I'll make that motion as recommended. Sorry, it's been a long night.
Second.
Ms. Stronach, and I have a second by Mr. Brian Dick. Roll call vote. Oh, actually, I'm going to just say this. In a couple of these, I think, Mr. Montorio, we pushed them off because we didn't have them in the packet. But all in all, I think it's important for our residents to understand if residents are still on, how much you do with your experience, how much money we actually save as opposed to some other communities. I know we only care about Tewksbury, but looking what we spend on senior town council and town council is incredibly low compared to other cities in town. That's a credit to you and staff. I just want to call that out. That's all. So I have a motion and I have a second, and we're going to do a roll call vote with Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Mr. Montorio, any other business on your side?
No, I just wanted to inform the board that on Thursday, I will be interviewing the 3 candidates on the civil service list for police chief. I will be joined in the interviews by the assistant town manager, the human resources director, and the chairman of the board of selectmen. We'll conduct those on Thursday. That's it.
Okay, perfect. Looking forward to it. All right, that brings us to minutes. Ms. Wellman.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion for adoption of the minutes, regular session, January 7th, 2020.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Ms. Wellman.
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well.
Thank you. And then second, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes for the regular session, January 21 of 2020.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a second by Mr. Kratman. Okay, roll call vote. Because it's a virtual meeting, I should remind residents, they probably say, why do they keep on voting this way? But Mr. Kratman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. It brings us down to board member reports. Why don't we kick it off with Mr. Kratman?
I really don't have any reports. What I would do is I'd like to mention a lot of these boards are up for reappointments, and the town manager's office and the clerk's office are reaching out to a lot of the members to see if they want to be reappointed. So if anybody is listening to these tonight's meeting, if they could contact our office to see if they want to be reappointed, talk to Janine or Christine to let them know that you want to be reappointed to the board. And anybody who doesn't, we will be posting those positions right after the first of the year. That's all I have for tonight.
Perfect. Thanks, Mr. Kratman. Good call out. Great call out. How about Mr. Brian Dick?
Nothing to add tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for a very strong meeting. Thank you.
Team effort. How about Ms. Emery Stronach?
To say that the elementary building committee meeting had a off-cycle meeting today to discuss the appeal, the planning board appeal and the conservation appeal, because it's basically frozen in time. And we wanted to move forward with beginning some of the excavation work, the demolishing of the bleachers, and some fencing and some parking lots, so that we could move this forward project forward. Otherwise, we would be in a hold pattern until July 24th. We assessed the risk as a minimal risk, and we moved forward with beginning that work. The abutters are going to be notified by mail. This is not a requirement. It is something that we feel is essential to the transparency of the project. So we will be letting them know that that work will be beginning very shortly. And they are also sending certified letters to the abutters to make sure that their homes are surveyed. So in the event that there is any damage done by the project, we have a baseline. That will be sent by certified mail and by phone calls. And residents do not have to participate in that if they do not want to. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And we're meeting again next Thursday.
Okay, very good. Thank you. How about Ms. Wellman?
Hi, thank you so much. I have just a couple of quick things. First, I wanted to remind people that we have an election. We actually have a town election coming up on June 16th. Polls are open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you can vote absentee if you want. I don't remember what the deadline is on that, Mr. Manager, but I know that that's an option for folks this year who have the COVID-19 pandemic is a legitimate reason to vote absentee. So just as a reminder, I also wanted to say that it was my privilege this Sunday to attend the Black Lives Matter rally on the Common that was organized by some local folks. It was well attended, particularly from our youth, and it was peaceful. And we had tremendous support from the public driving by and great support from our local law enforcement officers who were there. There was a lot of things going on around town that day as well, with the recognition of the 90th birthday of Edmund Stoddard, a Korean War veteran. And there was a great parade, and I was heartened by the support of our local active duty military, our veterans, and our fire department that came out and gave the parade a meaningful escort. I also wanted to state that I understand that this coming Sunday, there's going to be an event called Back the Blue, which supports our law enforcement officers also on the Common from 1 to 4 p.m. And I look forward to attending that as well and showing our support for the men and women who work hard to protect and serve us every day. And finally, I wanted to extend congratulations to our high school graduates who are graduating today and tomorrow, and thank the school department and the administrators, the school committee, and parents and our public safety have been working together to make this a very special and memorable experience at such an interesting time. And I wanted to finally extend many thanks to Principal Kristen Vogel, who's leaving the district. Her educational expertise and her transformational leadership has been a tremendous asset to our town and families, and she will be missed. I wish her great luck in her future endeavors. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and just one. Oh, please go ahead, Mr. Crabman.
No, it's Richard. It's Richard. I just want to jump in, and I apologize.
Oh.
Jane referenced the this coming Sunday, the Blue Lives Matter event. That may be postponed due to other things going on that day. So I think that's going to be pushed off to a future date.
Okay,
So I haven't, but I didn't get that information out to you, so I apologize for that.
Nope, then thank you very much.
All right, good correction. The just super quick here. So Mr. Montori made the budget look very easy, as we know. Doing this and sitting down with Mr. Montori over the course of a year. This thing is it's not put together overnight, but just an incredible job. And Mr. Montori, I know you're not going to take any credit, and you'll pass it all down to your assistant town manager, department heads, like you always do. But to put this budget together at this level, at this line item level, is just it's amazing. So I want to thank you for that. I know it was a little bit. It's not the sexiest thing in the world to go through, but just incredible job there. I know we spent so much time, energy, and effort on it. So I just want to thank you for that, because you make it look very easy, and I know it's not easy. That's all.
Thank you.
And that's all I had. I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, do I have a second? Okay, I promise you, our final roll call vote of the night. Mr. Crabman.
I vote aye.
How about Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Ms. Wellman?
Aye, thank you.
And the chair votes aye as well. Awesome. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody.